Welcome to Have You Heard with Heather Darling. I'm Heather Darling, and today's guest is Senator Vin Gopal. Mr. Gopal is a 2007 graduate of Penn State University. He's a marketing business development professional and the owner and operator of Direct Development LLC and Community Magazine. He also created a nonprofit civic association to help groups affected by the high cost of living maintain their economic independence. The Senate term to which he was elected started in November. He was elected in November 7th of 2017 in his first elected office, which he began in 2018. Welcome to the show, Senator.
Thank you, Heather. Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you on. So let's get right into it with our state. Affordability is a huge issue right now. We're currently experiencing a housing crisis for residents and that are renters as well as homeowners that are suffering. So in your elected capacity, what is it that you've done to help stem this and make things more affordable?
Yeah, so New Jersey obviously has some of the highest cost of living, highest taxes. We've got some incredible resources with proximity to New York and Philadelphia. And, we have obviously a beautiful Atlantic Ocean and there's a good job market here. But definitely the cost of living is high, which makes it harder. So I've pushed in a lot of bipartisan pieces of legislation to try to apply as many funds as possible. The state actually did very well over the last 4 years they had a corporate tax, which I'm happy to see that the governor and legislature is eliminating this year. But that brought in a lot of revenue. So we're trying to put the revenue back in towards trying to help taxpayers. Roughly about 50% of the state budget this year is some form of property tax rebate, whether it's senior freeze, homestead rebate. It's about 50% of the entire budget, the anchor property tax program. So I'd like to see that number get higher. One of the big problems we've had in New Jersey is over the last 25 years, we've had a lot of debt, and we've had a lot of funds raided. We've seen governors from both parties, Democrats and Republicans, raid transportation trust fund, different funds, and we've seen our pension obligations. So we've actually tried really hard in a bipartisan way to make full pension payments, even pay a little bit more, try to clear a lot of that debt, and try to get ourselves into a good fiscal standing. One of the things we need to do as it relates to affordable housing is try to actually create more opportunities and give developers opportunities where they have to do affordable housing, but also with the increased construction costs and increased costs of labor and workforce, to make sure that it's something they can do. And even in parts of my district, it's hard to find an apartment here for less than $1,800 a month. And it's hard to live here in New Jersey on a $50,000 a year salary. It's not easy. So I think trying to use as much of these federal and state funds that we've received since COVID and putting them towards smart, affordable housing development projects, I think is something that I sponsor a number of bills on. I've also sponsored a bill with Senator Singleton, bipartisan bill on first-time homeowner buyership. Dover Township up in your neck of the woods did a similar program on first-time homeowners to try to give them up to a $10,000 tax credit when they're buying their first home that they're living in, not an investment property, not some other property. So I think there's a lot of creative things we can do to try to increase home ownership and try to make it a little easier.
You know, it's interesting that you say that about the developers because I attended not one but two economic development forums last week, one in Pennsylvania, one in New Jersey, and they both referenced banking issues being a problem for developers too. So it's interesting that you're looking at that not only from the resident side but the developer side as well. Let's talk about some of your bills and the budget. Why do you believe that we need a bill requiring state agencies to update demographic data collection?
So demographic data collection, it's important that we have accurate data, especially as we came out from the 2020 census. We saw legislative elections happen a year later because the data wasn't affected. We also see school districts having challenges, and we've got a lot of school districts in the state right now who, because of a Supreme Court-backed formula, that they are getting penalized when I don't think the numbers accurately represent their free and reduced lunch rates, their poverty rates, their special education rates. And a lot of that centers around demographical data. for example, I can tell you I am Asian American, and there is we're classified as the AAPI, which we're talking about maybe a ton of countries. We're talking about Indian Americans, Chinese Americans, Japanese Americans, Korean Americans, and to lump all of them in one category, including Pacific Islanders, I think makes it complicated. I think we need the most accurate data to see how different groups are doing, where different groups are doing, well, education-wise, how they're doing as far as demographics-wise. We've got a huge poverty piece down in Ocean County, where there's a significant, in Lakewood, a significant Orthodox Jewish population, and we've seen some poverty rates, unfortunately, increase there. We need to understand why that's happening. We need to understand why that's happening in different areas, and I think the only way we can do that is with the proper data. So not only does it affect government programs and government resources, but also on how we can make sure if there are connections with some of these communities and there are certain challenges. Right now in the Asian community, there's a big issue as it relates to diabetes and heart disease. We're seeing a big increase among Asian Americans with heart disease and diabetes increasing. And there's been nonprofits, SKM Foundation, that's created for that purpose now. So we need to understand why that's happening, why that community specifically, why Indian Americans and Sri Lankan Americans, why those Americans are having higher rates. Is it something in the food? Is it something hereditary? So I think that's part of the reason why we just want to make sure there's the most accurate data so we can try to understand how to solve some of these challenges and get more government resources where we need it.
I saw that you have a bill to change the tax reimbursement programs, like the senior freeze, into a credit instead. Why will this help, and why now?
So a credit will make it easier, where it's just goes directly to them, and it just takes out the bureaucracy in the process. When we can have it reflect directly on their bills, on a tax bill, on a receipt, and there's not a check in the mail. Don't go back and forth. It saves on the taxpayer side money on cutting bureaucracy, but also makes it easier for the tax resident. When we send these rebate checks out, that's always not very helpful. We've seen the federal government do it. We've seen the state government do it. And there's direct deposit. There's a lot of cleaner and easier ways to do it now to make it easier for the taxpayer.
Last year, you were able to successfully advocate for your district, which I believe is the 11th district representing Monmouth County, when it came to the state budget. What is one success that you had with that advocacy?
Sure. So I fought very hard. We had a big problem last year with pop-up parties in my district. These parties were coming up, well known, down in Ocean County too, but in Long Branch, we had thousands of people coming in, and they were not very respectful of the community in Long Branch, and a lot of garbage, businesses destroyed, and it was I guess kids or young adults, they were doing it through Instagram and social media tools, and people were coming and drinking, and it was not great. I drove around after one of the pop-up parties in Long Branch in Pier Village, and there were literally garbage all over the streets. And what folks don't know that they come in, while Pier Village itself in Long Branch, it's a Kushner property, it's a wealthy area, more wealthy area in town. All around that is very working class communities in the city of Long Branch where I live. And those poor people were sitting there cleaning up garbage the day after. So it had a very negative impact. So we were successful in getting $500,000 for police overtime for the city of Long Branch, but also to make sure that there were, for the rest of the summer, that we had a police presence there at the beach, and also to make sure that the city of Long Branch was very successful. They sued, they got aggressive. They filed a lawsuit not just against Instagram, but all of those individual people, anyone who promoted those pop-up parties, that unlawful gathering. They sued, and it stopped, and they stopped coming to Long Branch, and we got super aggressive. And I do think that's something the state needs to invest in, because while it's a Long Branch problem, it's a problem for the entire area. And some of our critics are trying to make this about race and other things, and it had nothing to do with that. I wouldn't, nobody would want 1,000 people coming in their backyard and having a big party, and it's disrespectful, and it needs to be done with proper permitting and everything else. So I think there was a good investment for the state, but I was happy to see that. And we were able to eliminate that problem pretty quickly.
Do you foresee that as something that will continue into this summer and going forward as far as prevention?
It's possible, but I think what Long Branch did, which was good, is their town attorneys got aggressive and they sued. They sued everybody, and they filed suits. And I introduced a bill last year, which I think helped, where the bill basically said that the parents would be held accountable if their child under 18 was at any of these pop-up parties, that the fine would be passed on to them. So I think we took a number of measures, and I think that's made it less aggressive. We want people to gather respectfully. We want people to shop. We want people to eat. We want people to hang out outside. But you got to do it respectfully. You can't damage property. You can't throw cups on the ground. You can't throw garbage on the ground. That's just not how human beings and adults are supposed to act.
How about your budget priorities for this year? What are they?
So one of my biggest priorities still on budget is school funding and mental health. The state has, the districts, we've got a number of districts that have lost money in enrollment because their enrollment's gone down from the S2 funding formula. And while a district may have lost 50 or 100 students, their other costs have gone up. Their healthcare costs have gone up, inflation costs have gone up, special ed costs have gone up. So I strongly am opposed to the state cutting funding from these. We were successful in negotiations and restoring about 104 million in cuts, but there's a lot more work to do, and we need a new school funding formula, one that reflects all of these areas. So trying to get more money for school funding, stabilization aid, increasing special education funding, and also a big budget priority is mental health. We've seen a rise, especially among, unfortunately, teen girl suicide, but a rise since COVID. COVID really did a number on a lot of everybody, right? But mostly on young adults, depression, anxiety through the roof. And we're seeing it, the lack of normalization, the learning recovery process, everything. COVID had such a negative impact on those poor kids. So I want to see as much funding and resources we can put into our school districts to make sure the state is there for counselors, mental health providers, tutoring, and services like that.
Senator, it's time for that point that we do a commercial break, so everybody stay tuned. We'll be back for the second half with Senator Vin Gopal.
What makes a Wawa Club? Is it the crispy bacon on the turkey BLT? The endless layers of flavor of the buffalo chicken salad? Or is it a secret handshake? Nah, at Wawa, there's a club for everyone. Find yours today.
We Ride for Those Who Died. The Police Unity Tour and RVN Television is bringing to you a show called On Your Honor, Straight Talk. And I'm your host, Patrick Montouri. I am a retired police chief from Florham Park, New Jersey, and I am also retired from the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C. I am currently, for the last 27 years, the CEO and founder of the Police Unity Tour. And this show will bring to you straight talk about law enforcement, the actions and heroism that is provided to you, the citizens of the United States, as well as their actions in falling in the line of duty, as we could see some of the stories that surround that. Again, please watch us on RVN Television and be safe. Take care.
At Jersey Mike's, they slice your order fresh right in front of you. And let me tell you, watching that can send a rush of emotions through a person. Excitement, impatience, baby-like wonder, indecisive, anticipatory chewing, nervous pacing, happy claps, and finally, jealousy, because that's this guy's sub. I should order one. Good idea.
Sliced right in front of you. It's a Jersey Mike's thing. A sub above.
Welcome back to Have You Heard with Heather Darling and today's guest, Senator Vin Gopal. Senator, what are your thoughts on the governor's proposed budget?
Right now, positive. I think that I'm someone who hasn't always supported the governor's budgets. I'm probably one of the few Democrats who has not backed his budget every year. I mean, there's no secret. I've battled with the governor on a number of issues. I wasn't there on $15 minimum wage. I wasn't there on a lot of the COVID stuff when corporations like Home Depot and folks were allowed to open, but the small businesses weren't. But this budget, I think, has been a good budget. I'm happy to see there's no tax increases. There's full pension payments. There's actually tax deductions. and I think there's healthy investments. I'd like to see a little bit more in mental health. I think the state has invested more in mental health funding the last few years than the cumulative 15. But I do know that obviously the world is a different place now. I'd like to see more on school funding. I'd like to see more on special education funding. Right now, the state reimburses on extraordinary special ed about 80% of the local school district. I'd like to see that get closer to 90, 95, and that really helps local districts. I'd like to see the state budget do a little bit more as it relates to helping school districts with transportation costs, as well as helping school districts with HVAC, plumbing, electrical, other areas. I think this is a unique opportunity where the state has a budget and federal funds right now that they're sitting on that they need to spend, and they should look at how to update those one-time areas, such as roofing, such as electrical, such as plumbing, such as adding solar. That's the one thing I'd like to say. But overall, I saw a lot of really good investments in the state in this budget.
You've referenced schools a few times, and I understand you're the head of the Senate Education Committee. So I'm going to ask you some questions about that in a minute, but my first question is for you. What have you learned after one full year as the head of that committee?
Very complicated, way more complicated was my ignorance coming in, but there's a lot of stakeholders trying to understand the public school world, the charter school world, the religious school world. We have probably the biggest challenge the state is facing right now, and I didn't really know how bad it is a teacher shortage. It's been getting worse and worse 10 years, and I think that we're having these, I call them kids, they're in their early 20s, they're graduating, they're going into an industry where they're not getting the healthcare and benefits that they once were getting, that they have to, it's way more political now over the last few years. You got people going to Board of Ed members. You got states now passing that they want to put cameras in the classroom because they don't trust teachers. They want to see what teachers are doing all day. I mean, it's gotten to a really bad place. And so it's hard. I talked to all the deans of education in our schools, and they're like, we are having trouble. We're going to get to a place where we're not going to get qualified applicants who want to teach in our schools. And I always, affordability is important, very important, but I always make the comment that people always talk about moving out of the state of New Jersey and moving to Florida or Carolinas, but they tend to do that after their kids are out of the school system. Mm-hmm. They don't do that while they're kids. They're not sending their kids to Florida schools or South Carolina or Georgia schools. They want to send New Jersey because New Jersey has very good public schools. And we can obviously do a lot more. So I think this is probably the greatest challenge, probably the greatest crisis we're facing. I battle with my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to be very careful with this issue because the more we politicize this, just like any profession, you got bad politicians, they should be removed. You got bad cops, removed. You got bad teachers, we have steps in place to remove them. But we got to be careful on generalizing on an industry because we're not getting good. The candidates are starting to not get great because people are questioning. They're like, am I going to go into this career, not get the same healthcare benefits that my mom and grandmother got as a teacher, and I'm going to get abused from parents and those thinking I'm doing X, Y, and Z, and I'm not making a lot of money. And I don't know how we fix that right now. That's one of the big crises. And so we have to improve the climate where there's respect for teachers again. And we're not seeing that. And kids can see it. When their parents aren't respecting the teachers, the kids aren't going to do it either. And I've had increased numbers in my district, unfortunately, of kids telling off teachers, just a lack of respect. And it's not unique to this. It's society as a whole, unfortunately, right now. It's gotten worse and worse with that. But I think that's probably one of the big things that I did not expect it to be as big a problem a year ago.
It's interesting that you bring that to the spotlight because it's whether it's teachers or police officers or any other profession where that spotlight has gone in the last few years because of everything being as politically charged as it's been since, let's say, 2020, especially during COVID. Everything was heightened. And it just seems like those professions, and like you said, anything that came into the spotlight, it's been under attack. So
yeah, I mean, I'm police officers. One of the hardest jobs out there. They wake up every morning and life's on the line, and I think they should be held to a different standard as far as healthcare benefits and respect. They're different than other public employees. The same with firefighters. So I think we have this social media craze, and I think there are obviously some good things with Facebook and Twitter, but we try to jump on these people that everyone has made tough, bad choices in life. They've tried to be better people. I don't believe that anyone's purposely, and we're getting into, unfortunately, it's been an unhealthy place where everyone just jumps on everyone. And we see one police officer do something wrong, and now the police officers I talk, they love the body cam law because these guys are out there doing the best they can. They're going to have bad actors, just like any profession's going to have. But we see the positive impacts of that, of making sure that the truth is out there, and I think that's important. And we can't just look at that one thing that happens. I see horrible stories of cops around the country. And I don't see it in my district. I know the police officers in my district, and they're working hard every day to try to protect their residents. They're engaged in their communities, and everyone's just doing the best they can.
Yeah, I agree. I think everybody in this tough time is. And speaking of that, you recently held a hearing through the Senate Education Committee regarding teen suicides. What did you learn from that?
That the social media really has become the number one trigger. Back when I was growing up, and I'm sure when you were growing up, you got bullied. It was over at the end of the school day. Now bullying is worse. It follows you all night. It follows you in social media. It follows you in text messages. It follows you in all different ways. And we know that the body, brain, mind does not mature until your mid-20s. When you have a young man, young woman, and there's other challenges going on in the household, self-esteem gets low. I've had a number of teen suicides, unfortunately, mostly girls, teen suicides in Monmouth and Ocean counties over the last several months, and they're heartbreaking. And we need to get there quicker. We need to make sure we're able to identify the folks, but it's a cumulative problem when we're getting less and less teachers and less social workers and less school nurses that are signing up for the jobs. It becomes a cumulative challenge. So it's one of the big crises. It's starting to become a crisis right now. We have great nonprofits, Society for the Prevention of Teen Suicide, which is located in my district in Freehold, is incredible nonprofit 501c3 doing God's work. There's a lot of other really good organizations out there, and we need to just keep bringing everyone together and try to address some of this. It's so hard to ask a child to make sure they go in, take standardized tests, be successful when they have so many challenges in the household. It's nearly impossible, and it's unfair.
Do you have any specific next steps planned for addressing this?
Yeah, so we're going to have put together a series of bills, basically going district by district, asking every school district to basically, one of the good things and bad things about New Jersey is we have 600 school districts, which makes it hard. So we need to understand of all 600 school districts, what are your current mental health services? Every district is different. I'll go to one district, they have 3 in-house social workers. Another district contracts somebody coming in once a week. There's no rhyme or reason. Nothing is steady. And we need to relook at the anti-bullying laws passed in 2007, modernize it with social media. We need to give tools to our county prosecutors and our police departments to be a little bit more engaged in trying to identify some of these situations before they get too bad. And we have to figure out how at the school level to make sure that if a teacher or somebody sees reports of bullying, how that gets acted upon immediately. We saw a really big failure in that Ocean County school district, and that happened, and I was happy to see the superintendent resign. He should have.
It's tragic when we see things like that. Senator, shockingly, this always happens when I'm talking to somebody who's an interesting guest. We get to the end of the show before I get to the end of the question. So because I got the wrap it up cue from our staff, I want to ask you, is there anything else before we finish today that you would like to impart on the viewers, specifically as far as what you plan to bring forth, what you think is most important in our state? Anything specific you'd like to comment on before we wind up today?
I think civility is important. I'm proud I run a civility program at Monmouth University with former Senator Joe Carollis, who used to be Republican state chair. I'm a former Democratic chair. And we have to work with people regardless of political views. I've gone shooting with a group of NRA members in my district who don't vote for me, who we have disagreements, but I talk to them. I try to understand their worldview. I understand where they're coming from. They know that I have different views when it comes to gun control. That doesn't mean we can't talk to each other as human beings. We can't respect each other. We can't try to work together. I can't understand. I need to understand their upbringing, growing up and going shooting with their family in Pennsylvania. And they understand my upbringing, growing up in a Hindu vegetarian household. So I think only when we understand each other and where we're coming from and what our worldviews and what our and we don't automatically assume the other person is evil and there is a goodness. I think that's the only way we're going to succeed. So I try to impart that as much as I can in my capacity as a state senator. I take a lot of pride. I'm in a district that Governor Murphy lost by 3,000 votes, and I won by about 3,000 last time. So it's about 6,000 people who crossed over. I'm proud of that because I think it's important that we have elected officials that can work with all sides, work across the aisle, try to find civility in public discourse. And it's one of the things I like about Governor Murphy. We've had strong disagreements, but it's always respectful. And I think that's how government should operate.
Senator, I appreciate that. I appreciate your coming on today. Next time you want to go shooting with some Republicans, let me know. I'd love to hit the range with you, but I think the talking at a range...
Go out to Jackson. If you're ever in Jackson, you want to go shooting, let me know.
I can be in Jackson to go shooting. I mean, the reality is the talking is before and after the action, as you know. There's not a lot of talking during shooting going on.
No.
But I do appreciate it, and we had more questions for you today, and I'm sure we'll have more in the future.
I rambled a little.
No, listen, I would love to have you come back sometime if opportunity permits, and have you answer some more questions and tell us more about what it is you're trying to do to make New Jersey better for everybody.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day, Senator. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next week for another episode of Have You Heard?